Hello and welcome to DoShitters Sharing Shit, where we come to talk to our guests about their creative process. Today with us, Avi Burra. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
We always like to start these interviews with the card that gives the name to our Oracle deck, Do Shit. So want to ask you, what shit do you do, Avi?
So I am a creative or artistic person trapped inside an engineer's body. So what I do is I work in technology. Yeah, I live in the U.S., close to New York City, and I work remote for a large healthcare technology company, and I have a background in engineering, both mathematical finance and electrical engineering. So I do work in that world, but I'm also a Bitcoiner. And as I found Bitcoin, it allowed me to start thinking about what I'm actually doing with my life and what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to make plays. I wanted to write plays. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to write books. And so, going down that Bitcoin rabbit hole allowed me to make time to truly explore my creative self. So a couple of things I do. I've written a book. It's the first long form book of fiction about Bitcoin, right? It's about a young man's journey, learning about Bitcoin, and in the process of overcoming the sudden death of his father. So the book is called 24. I released that about a year ago now, actually. And there is a sequel that's pending for that one. I will also host a podcast that talks about Bitcoin and Nostr. Nostr is a decentralized communications protocol. It was developed by a Bitcoiner, and there are people building social media applications using this decentralized technology. But there are also other applications that you could build, not just social media based. So, but there's a audio space like Twitter Spaces on Nostr. It's called Nostr, and I record my podcast. It's called Pleb Chain Radio. It's a weekly show, and we interview folks doing things in Bitcoin and Nostr. On that, yeah, it's Fridays, usually in the evening, U.S. time.
Nice. I think that it's very interesting as well that since your Bitcoin rabbit hole journey allowed you to have time to dedicate to your artistic endeavor and your creative endeavors, to see as well in your creative process how that affected the way that you address your work and the way that you address the shit that you do, because a lot of Bitcoiners have told how the incentive structure also allows you to focus on different things in your life and in your creativity. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can discover in this creative process of yours with the book side, with the podcast side. And we always say that creativity is something that we can apply to anything. So it's going to be fun to explore this journey with you and seeing as well how these decentralized technologies play into it.
Love it. Looking forward to the conversation.
Okay.
Let's see.
Mar, what do we have here?
Before we start, we have 10 cards with some questions, but we don't know what is underneath. But just in case that we know that nobody knows, you will choose 3 numbers and we don't know what card will come up to talk about the subject. So...
Okay, so these are 10 cards that we selected out of the deck of 84 cards that we have on Do Shit, and you can choose the first one to see where it leads us.
All right, well, let's go with number 3.
Okay, number 3. Let's see. Under number 3, we have In the Zone, which is this card that reminds us of this place when you are creating or you are working on doing something that you are really passionate, and you forget about everything and you are just in the zone, having fun and doing your shit and losing track of time. And it's the question is, if you have this zone, sometimes it's difficult to achieve it. How do you do to go into this zone and not be distracted? How is your zone?
Yeah, I don't know how to go into the zone, but I will tell you, when the few times I have been in it, it is the most incredible experience. It's almost a religious experience. So I'll give you a few examples. When I was writing my book 24, there would be times when I'd sit down and it would be just, oh, what do I write about? Oh, I left the story off at this phase, and well, let me see. And I chose a fairly I made my life a little harder with the book, because it's a book. There's 24 chapters. Each chapter is a word, a seed phrase, right? And it's a story of how this young man discovers the seed phrase to his father's Bitcoin wallet, right? Bitcoin treasure. And I had to weave in for each chapter that word into the theme of the chapter. So, and some of these seed phrases, some of the words are just very, very plain, right? It's like there's a word like uh, below, for instance, or club, or right. It's like, how do I put this word in? Like, how do I make it a theme of a chapter? So I'd made my life difficult, so that I'd be sitting down and saying, "Oh my God, what do I do now?" Okay, so that was the hard part. There were times, this maybe happened 4 or 5 times when I was writing this book, where I'd sit down and I don't know what got me there, but I'd start typing, and the next thing I knew, it's 12 pages written, and 2.5, 3 hours had passed, and I didn't even know. I didn't even know what, and then I'd read and go back and read it, and I said, "Who wrote this? Where did this come from?" I don't know how this happened, and it's the most incredible feeling. And then you know, and then obviously that, at least for me, it didn't happen immediately after that again. It was because I was chasing that feeling. I was chasing that feeling, saying, "Oh, I need to get back." That felt so good. It was almost like God was working through me, right? If you're religious, um, and then it's only when I stopped searching for that, saying, "Okay, you know what? Forget it. It's never going to happen again. That was the last time it happened," and then I'd find it again. So maybe one way of doing it, of getting into the zone, is not being attached to being in the zone. And once you let go of that attachment, almost give up, right, and say, "Oh, it's not going to happen." And that maybe that's one way of attracting it. But certainly, one way of pushing it away is saying, "I want to be in the zone. I need to do what it takes to be in the zone." In some sense, the mind is the worst enemy in the creative process. So it's about taking the mind away, right? And then your art flows through the heart and the soul. But it's, as long as the mind is there, watching and criticizing and commenting, that is a recipe for not getting into the zone and doing any kind of good shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that yeah, you've really struck a chord, because the more we want to get ourselves into that zone, it's like it's so elusive, and it isn't a place that you can program to get in. In the end, it's with Mar, we've talked sometimes about, you just need to sit down with the discipline to know that it might not come, and the more you allow yourself to put yourself in the position of spending time with the shit that you're doing, the more you're opening that up for that potentially happening. No.
Right.
And I adore this idea of magic that you are talking about, this kind of religious experience or something, and that comes with not trying to achieve it, but just let it go, that it's very important and so difficult to do.
It is difficult to do, yeah. Which is, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm struggling writing the sequel, because it's like that phase of my life was so incredible. It's especially we can talk about this over the course of this conversation, but I was stuck for a long time. So it's 24 chapters, as I said. I wrote the first 5-ish chapters. There's a character, Martha, you've read the book, so you know who comes in chapter 6, and I just did not know how to bring that character into life. So I was stuck for 6 months in writer's block, not knowing what to do. But then once I overcame that next 18 chapters, I was able to write them in about 4 or 5 months, and they were like I said, there were like maybe 3, 4, 5 instances of just being in the zone and knocking out dozens of pages at a time. And so that, that was truly an incredible experience. And being able to complete a book, it's not a small book, right? It's 400 something pages long. Um, and now looking back, I need to complete the story, or at least continue the story in the sequel. And I'm almost scared to go back. It's like, can I rediscover that, or was that a once in my life sort of thing?
I'm sure it wasn't a once in a lifetime thing. And I think that one of the beauties, especially if you struggle, and I think that any artist can find that moment where they struggle with the creative block and suddenly they find a roadblock. And I can understand the difficulty of addressing the introduction of that character in particular. But even when you're facing the creative block, you still have to find yourself with that shit in your hands, even if you don't write anything for however long. At least it's that time to try to unlock that puzzle so that at some point you're going to be able to make it flow, no?
Yeah. I guess the trick to doing shit is doing shit, right? You start doing it.
Yeah.
Completely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we see what hides behind the next card? Which number are you feeling like?
I don't know if you've caught the pattern yet, but I'm going to go with number 6.
Okay, number 6. Under number 6, we have proud of shitty. We have this idea of do shit because we meant to be like, just do it, even if it's not the perfect thing and it's a shit, but then just do it. And then there's this card where it reminds us like, and then be proud of it and look at your shit and be proud. So this is the card to ask what are your proudest shits and how do you feel proud of once you accomplish a project? You can look at it with proud, or sometimes you're overcritical and you don't see it as a nice thing.
No, I do get proud. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, and maybe I'm the only one. But I used to, when I was much younger, in the very early days of blogging, there was Google purchased Blogspot, right? Blogspot was one of the first blogging sites. I'm talking about 20 years ago, and I was, a lot younger than, let's just say. I actually started a blog. This is again before Google purchased Blogspot, and I was, it was more like, so I've always been a fan of surrealism, like Dadaism, stream of consciousness. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just something to flow. So I used to write these very short, absurdist essays in my like late teens, early 20s. And, every now and then, maybe once every couple of years, I go back and I read that and I say, hey, that was good. That was good. I'm proud of what I wrote. I was a complete baby back then, but this is good stuff. And even when there were a few chapters in my book, well, in 24, which I'd go back and reread and say, oh, that was good. That was good. Maybe I'm the only one thinking that, but like I've really liked how I did that. So yeah, I do. Maybe it's not a constant feeling, but one of the reasons I wrote this book was for myself, right? It's I said, you know what, I have a story to tell, and I'm going to tell it. I'd spent way too much. So Martha, I think this is before we started recording, you'd mentioned Bitcoin Miami 2022. That was the first conference first time I'd stepped out after the pandemic lockdown, right? So 2 years, my family and we locked ourselves down, not because we were scared of the virus, but I just didn't want to be in that world, which I was seeing was becoming so ugly, right? Families fighting and so we completely locked ourselves down. And what I did was just listen to Bitcoin podcasts, going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, even though I'd been involved in the broader crypto blockchain world since 2016. It was only, starting 2019 and then certainly during the pandemic when I really went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And I've just spent so much time listening and absorbing that when 2022 came and the Bitcoin Miami, and I went there, my first outing, and I met all of these people, who I've been listening to on podcasts and chatting with them. And it was that just filled me with this sense of inspiration, saying, you know what, I've spent enough time absorbing. Now it's time to create, right? And so that's what I did. I don't know how I got here, but I think we're talking about being proud of stuff, right?
Mhm.
So it's that's when the process started. And every time I look back at some of the things I worked on, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I took that first step and started writing it. And yeah, so I do feel proud, not all the time, but I'm not overly self-critical of the creation itself, right? I can be self-critical, very self-critical of the process or of my behavior, but not of the end product. No.
Mhm.
That's very
And I
good
think
because
that
go
sorry,
Mar,
Marta,
please.
go.
Go.
No, I was about to say that I think that it's very important, that thing that you said about you write the book for you, not for everybody. It's like when you are creating for you because you have something to say, and you're not constantly checking the outside. It's something that comes from the inside. It's really important, this idea, I think.
Yeah, actually, so Mar, you reminded me. That's why I went back to that prehistory. So it's like, okay, it's time to create, and let me do something for myself, right? And in the initial phase, it was like, what can I do, right? Is there anything left to write about Bitcoin? It's like writing about Bitcoin is like writing about the sunrise or the sunset, or writing about walking in New York City. Everything that could have been said has been said. And so that I went through that process for a while and said, you know what? Hold on a second. Why am I thinking this way, right? Do I want to create something for other people to read? Is that my main goal, or is it for me to feel like I'm participating in this revolution in my own small way, and creating something? And so that's why I went in and said, you know what, I'm writing this book for myself. If people read it, they read it. If they like it, they like it. But first and foremost, it's for me to do something.
And I think that is so important in order to be able to be proud of what you're doing, because sometimes when you know that you're doing it for you and that you're doing something that is important to you, there are going to be parts that you're not going to think that are the best, and there are other parts that you are going to love, but you know that you did that for you, and that it's something that just finishing that is something that you can be proud of. I feel that when you are doing things with the expectation of doing something that you think other people need to reach or whatever, it's much easier for you to be doing something that generates that gap between what you're doing and feeling pride for having done that. And I think that it's very beautiful in the end, being able to do things simply because you think that it should exist in this world and you want to be able to put it out there.
Yeah,
very
agreed.
inspiring. Mar, shall we see what we have behind the third card?
That I don't know the number, but I can sense an idea.
Well, come on, you've definitely caught the pattern by now. I'm going with 9.
Oh, I thought that was a change of idea. Okay, let's see. Number 9.
369. That's what I'm doing.
I thought it was a
triangle.
I don't know, a triangle, exactly. But
she's visual. Mar is very visual.
Money flows. An interesting card that reminds that sometimes under the creation there's money needed, sometimes for the creation itself because you need money in order to make it, or sometimes to have the time to make the creation. And this is a question about how do you deal with money flow, how do you deal with the money for the creation.
Yeah, that's money is an interesting relationship, or at least, people have a very interesting relationship with money. And I think this is true I would say majority of the art community is there is an attachment to money, right, or to needing money. And I think that can interfere with the art in itself, and not produce the money as well, right? Because you're so I there's a saying, jump and the net will appear, right? It's easier said than done, right? But I honestly believe the right approach is not to think about the money, and it's to create something, pursue this beautiful thing that you want to create, right? It's, I mean, to me, art is that sort of interminable pursuit of beauty. It's a journey, right? There's no destination in art. It's just you're chasing something. Maybe that something is inside of you and you haven't realized it yet, right? But it's that pursuit, and I think that there, for it to be truly successful, because if you put your authentic self forward through your art, and of course you need some skill, right? I'm sorry to say, unfortunately, there's some people who don't have the skill, and even if they put their authentic self forward, it may or may not work. But if you're skilled in whatever craft you've picked up and you put your authentic self forward, I think the money will come, right? When you jump and the net will appear. But it's that attachment to money, or in some cases it could be to fame as well, right? It's sort of a related thing. Oh, I want to be recognized. I want people to say my name. I think that interferes with the creative process, because you're not doing it from a pure place. You're not doing it from a purely authentic place. So in my case, I'm fortunate enough. I mean, I'm not super wealthy or anything, but I'm comfortable. So I didn't need to make money off the book. Same thing goes with my podcast, right? I don't need to make money off my podcast. I don't have sponsors. So I did it with just for the sake of doing it, because I wanted to do it. And it's been, I wouldn't say I got wealthy off the book, but it's done reasonably well. Sold 1,000 copies, maybe a little more than that, which is not bad for a Bitcoin book. Yes, it's not a international bestseller level, but it's I think, and again, as I said, it's much easier to say this than to actually implement this. But just letting go of that need for money and focusing on bringing your full self, creating with joy, and following whatever that calling is, right, that your art is taking you towards. If you're fully immersed in that, I think money, well, first of all, money becomes irrelevant, right? It's like, well, I'm happy. I'm pursuing what I love. I'm happy. What is money going to give me? And Martha, you remember there's this whole conversation in 24, right, in the book, where Oliver's talking to this special character, and they're talking about money, saying, well, what is this money going to give you? Well, you're going to get something with this money. And what is that something going to give you? Well, give you something else. For what end? Well, to be happy. Okay, so you want to be happy. Why can't you be happy, right? Do the things that make you happy. Think the thoughts that create the feelings that create happiness, and then money becomes irrelevant in that scenario.
You bring up a very interesting topic, because that's something as well that sometimes people feel, that the pressure sometimes to create your art for money suddenly creates a relationship there where you are having to do something with that goal of money. And that's sometimes where people decide to find side adventures and side hustles so that they can have their basic needs met in that way, and that they can have the peace of mind to be able to not, in a way, taint their art with that pressure and that need that needs to be delivered in X time, because this client has to give me this, and suddenly a lot of external factors come into the creation of the art piece. But in the end, it's true that there is this, whether you want to be able to live off your art, and what does that mean in terms of the pressure that you're going to be putting into your art to become your income generator, versus being able to leave your art outside of it in some way, so that you can not have that and have to then figure out a way to generate that inflow that obviously anyone needs to be able to live, no?
Yeah, and I think I should preface what I said earlier with, I mean, there's a basic, you can't be starving, right? You can't go to a starving person, or if someone who's living in a war zone and bombs are falling on them, and they have to take care of their family, and say, hey, why can't you be happy? No. So let's just say the basic needs are taken care of, right? Where you're able to feed your family, and you're not unsafe. At that point, the question is, then when people start talking about money, it's like, but do you really need that Lamborghini or whatever it is, right? Do you need to go to Disneyland or Disney World? Or can you, or are you really searching for something that's actually within you?
Yeah. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to ask, because when you released your book, you used a very interesting strategy that has to do with money, which is that you put a bounty in your book, a Bitcoin bounty, so that people who read the book would be motivated to try to read it and find the puzzle, to be able to find that treasure chest where you kept putting in more money into that bounty, more of this magic internet money, which kept growing with the sales of your book, which created a very interesting incentive for people in reading the book. And it used the money flow in a very different way, because in a way you were spending like the marketing money that you would be using so that it would be like a bounty. So I wanted to understand a little bit how you decided to work this money flow into your art, because obviously there is a connection there.
Yeah, so maybe for folks who are not that familiar, right, with the way Bitcoin works, I mean, with your regular bank account, you have a username and your password, right? You sign in, and then you have the numbers on the screen, and you pretend that that's your real money. In some cases, it could be, but if everyone starts withdrawing that money, we'll see how real that money is. But in any event, I digress there. With Bitcoin, the way there's no username and password, but the way you access your Bitcoin typically is through a seed phrase, right? It's and a seed phrase can be 12 words or 24 words. And then if you have a special kind of wallet software installed on your computer, or a hardware device, you can punch in those 12 words or those 24 words, and then you're in access of your Bitcoin, right? You can move it, you can spend it, you can do what you want with it. So the book, the book's called 24 chapters. It's about a young man trying to find his father. Suddenly passes away, and he's trying to find his father's treasure. It takes him a while to realize that it's actually a Bitcoin seed phrase, because he's not a Bitcoiner. He's a computer scientist, works in crypto Web3, but he doesn't put two and two together for a while. But once he realizes it, he's trying to find it. So the fact is, I had 24 words. It was a valid seed phrase, but I didn't put it in the right order intentionally, right? I scrambled the order, and if the chapters 1 through 24 are in a different order, but I put in clues to the correct order of that seed phrase all through the book. And because it was a valid seed phrase, it pointed to a Bitcoin address. And I put some Bitcoin in there, and I let people know, hey, if you read the book, that's how you're going to get the clues to the right order. You can arrange the words, and then if you're the first one to find the right arrangement, that you can claim that. And then the other thing I said is, as I sell more copies of the book, I'm going to take a percentage of the profits and keep increasing to the bounty. So I didn't really think this through. Like, I know it's better for me to say I had it all planned out in my head at the beginning, and I executed the plan masterfully. But it was just like, hey, I'm creating a wallet. Let me throw some sats, some Bitcoin in that wallet, and see if anyone finds it. But then as people started reading it, and they were following the clues, I said, oh wow, I can actually bring some interesting financial engineering, essentially breaking the fourth wall, right? It's because you're reading the book about this character trying to find the seed phrase, but then you have to take the clues from there and find the real seed phrase outside. So it became, accidentally, I should say, it became this interesting work of immersive art, if you will, right? Where and the bounty, it was almost like a flywheel effect. More people found out about it. They said, oh, I want to find this book, I was find this bounty. So then there'd be more sales, I'd get more, and I'd put it back in there. The bounty would grow, then even more people would find out about it, because they're like, oh wow, this bounty is pretty big. So yeah, it turned out to be an interesting experiment in marketing. Looking back, it was 0.17 Bitcoin, which is now almost $17,000. So my wife still gives me a hard time about that I threw away. But hey, now I don't
Putting
have
that
any
into
Bitcoin
a
left. Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't have any Bitcoin left. I gave it all away. So if anyone with a $5 wrench, you don't need to come to my house. It's all gone.
all gone for the art, because that's
Yeah.
what's the important part, putting into your art and making the shit that you want to do. Okay, Matt, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to comment about the money flows, or if we can go to the section for the readings. Okay.
Yeah, I really like this idea that it was kind of a play with your readers, and it's really nice to have this connection through the book. Not only people reading, but also playing with it and treasure hunting. It's really nice.
Yes, the treasure hunt
But the
within
good news
the
is
treasure hunt.
this template can be used for anything, right? It's I mean, you can hide a seed phrase in a movie in different scenes and just keep, the more people watch it, buy the tickets to watch it, you can put the ticket sales into it. You could, there's lots of things you could do with this.
This is definitely a strategy that I'm going to use at some point. Okay, so we've arrived to the part of the interview where we choose to do a reading out of the options that we have in our deck. So we have different options depending on the type of reading that you are more looking forward to. One of them would be the pros and cons map. It's a map that is to do readings that are more analytical when you want to make a decision about something, analyze the pros and the cons. Should I move to wherever and do this art that I've always wanted to do? What are the alerts to keep in mind? Then we also have the how to combat the shithole map, which is a map that is about, well, when one is struggling with creative block, or there is stuff that is keeping you in the shithole, like facing a little bit the fears and what's trapping you there, and a little bit trying to identify the hope and the way out. And then we also have past, present, and future, which is more a broad reading that addresses a little bit like where you're coming from in the past and where you're going to, and either with a project that you want to have a broad reading about, or even about your creative artistic life. So which of the maps is the one that calls to you more?
So I pick one, and one of you is going to do a reading on it?
Yes, we are going to be doing a reading here with you. You pick one, and then we will see the cards that come out and see how they resonate with you.
Yeah, let's pick. I'm going to go with how to combat the shithole.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. We always say when people are choosing the map, either when we use the card in a social environment, meeting new people that we don't know, or when we are meeting with friends, that people can choose to talk about the thing that they are asking about. Like, yeah, I want to ask about this thing because this is what is happening. Or they can choose to not share anything, not say anything, and just let the cards come out and see what topics they are trying to address to see how they resonate. So there is no correct way. You can just go with whatever you feel like.
Okay.
Perfect. Do you want to share anything, or shall we just see what the cards have for us?
Let's see what the cards have to say.
Let's go. Perfect.
Okay.
So,
go, Marta.
right. Mar, now, at least to give you some agency as well over the reading, has done 3 piles, and you need to choose between number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Let's go with 2.
Okay. So that way you will choose your cards. So we'll put the map cards in the middle, and then I will put the other cards around as set in the map. So the first card, it's about the fear that is trapping you in this shithole. So the fear. The fear is the hidden failures of the successful. This is the card where the main character is seeing somebody else that is really succeeding in some area, but it's seeing the failures, what it's underneath the success that sometimes we don't see. We see just the nice part and the success and everything is so impressive, but sometimes we need to be reminded about it's not that easy. It comes with a lot of wounds and failures. So this is a card that is in the fear. Maybe it's maybe you need to see this more in order to not have this idea of people are succeeding more or people are doing impressive things that it seems so difficult to do.
So interesting. So let me make sure I understand that correctly. So there's what's causing the block. One of the things that's causing the blockage is a fear, and the fear is stemming from being intimidated by the success of others. And the way to step out of the fear is to see that, well, it's not all perfect for them, right? There are failures too. And then see those failures and say, oh, okay, there's not, even the successful people fail, right? Okay, got it.
Exactly.
Good to know.
This is a card that always tries to talk to us about the idea that people have about the people who are very successful, who do a lot of books, who do a lot of films, or whatever the art form that they do. There is this generalized idea where you don't really look beneath. You just stay and inevitably we compare ourselves to them, and sometimes it's to them, and sometimes it's to past versions of ourselves and the success that we've had with one thing and the expectations that we've started to have about something. No, so it's a card that has to do with acknowledging those failures, with acknowledging the wounds as well of the process. And we always say as well in DoShit that the process has no shortcuts, and that it is going to have wounds, and that it is going to have failures attached to it. And it's a card that has to do with, hey, remember that when you're feeling that, everybody has those failures, everybody has that wounds. Yes, you may be hurting yourself, but it's not just you. The people you
Right.
admire the most and that you respect the most have also gone through what you are going through.
I like that. That's a good approach.
Okay.
Also, another reading is like seeing all these failures that it's needed in order to succeed, that not always is easy. Maybe it's a fear of seeing all this and saying, wow, it takes a lot to go
Right.
there.
Right.
Okay, let's see what is trapping us in that shithole.
The trap. The trap is the supporters, which is these people that sometimes here in this card there is the nebulosa, this goal, the thing that the main character is trying to achieve all the time. And this card, they have also supporters to go higher and to arrive more far away. So maybe the trap is in somehow the supporters, people need it underneath, or people that is not supporting enough or not finding the perfect person to achieve what you need to achieve or you want to achieve. Or I don't know, Marta, how do you read it if you have?
I mean, we always say that in DoShit, the cards are not negative or positive, that it always is about what they are tying, what chord they are trying to strike when they land in one place or the other. So the fact that the supporters landed on the trap part, it also makes me think, without knowing exactly what you're asking about, but having an intuition that it has to do with this blockage that we were talking about before. Doing the journey of writing a book, and I'm guessing writing a second one and addressing a creative process, especially when you are doing, it's a very lonely journey where you can't really rely, at least in the initial parts, with those supporters that are going to be putting you on their shoulders to be able to go that way, you know? So it can either go with the trap of whether you are not feeling that being able to have that support and then feeling that in a negative way, or
Mhm.
it can, in the end, it's always, because we always say that when people see cards, they are the ones who know, when they read the card supporters, um, who you think about when you feel that you need those supporters, or who you feel that you need with something else. But when we're talking about a trap in the supporters, sometimes it can have to do with whether the supporters that you have are the ones that you need for the journey that you're on. And it can go with the not feeling that you have the supporters to be able to reach that goal that you are aiming to reach.
Got it. Yeah, that's interesting. Good to know.
Okay.
Also, we also say that we say our feeling looking on the cards, but sometimes the people that is asking, the first thing that it comes in mind, maybe your reading is more accurate than ours, so it's our interpretation, but the good interpretation is yours always, because
Right.
it's your question. So maybe you are thinking about something else. That's the correct answer then.
Yeah, and in a way, people have, whenever you do kind of oracle cards, people quickly run to think about tarot, which in the end, tarot has a lot to do with the cards giving you answers. And with do shit, it doesn't have so much to do with do shit giving you the answer, but it plays more of like a mirror of different moments of the process and different things that you want to explore, to see which ones you actually feel that really helps you unlock parts that you haven't thought
Mhm.
about. Because sometimes you need to have elements that are going to just shine a light on different elements, and some of them are going to struck a chord and you're going to see yourself reflected in that, and some others are going to say, hey, yeah, maybe I feel that this card really struck a chord, and the rest I can understand how it would be, but you know.
Yeah.
Let's see the hope, Mar, with
Let's
this
see more the
shithole.
positive side, the hope to combat this shithole. Time happens. This is a card that reminds us that sometimes the time happens and the perfect moment is now, otherwise the time goes. And this is the hope, that to remind that time happens and maybe it's the moment.
Yeah. I always love the way that Mar represented this card. We all chose how to represent it, of picking this hourglass and taking away that bottom, so that we are very aware in the end that you can't really turn the hourglass of the time that we have on this earth. Um, so I think that, especially when it comes on the hope side, it feels like you know that the time that you want to invest into the shit that is blocking you is what is going to get you out of that block, you know, because in the end you're only going to be able to get out of it, well, making use of that time as it happens.
I love this. Yeah. First of all, and I should say, Mar, the illustrations are fantastic, every single one of them. But I do like this, the metaphor here that, I mean, it's almost scary, right? You can't turn the hourglass back around, but
It's life.
make each grain
Exactly.
of sand count. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what's the way out, Mar? Lead us on the way
The
out.
way out. The way out. Others validation. It comes again with the external people that we were having, the supporters here. And here it talks about also the way out according to exterior, maybe people validating this project or whatever it is, or people helping. So there's something about the others that can help to find a way out of this shithole.
So find someone who's going to validate what I'm doing.
It can either be about finding that someone who is validating, or even in terms of what we were talking before about how the first book that you did for yourself. I guess my question would be, is the thing that you are blocked about something that you are also doing for yourself? Or is there something about the expectations that people have created around the first book that are pressuring you to feel that there has to be those others' validation? And the card doesn't need to mean that you need others' validation. It may mean that, hey, maybe you need to forget that framing, because we always say that others' validation is that frame that others are holding, but you don't really need it to be able to do what you're doing. No, so this card in the end, I think that addresses a little bit um, how much the exterior validation may be playing in you being able to get out and do something without others' expectations. Or maybe you do need someone that is going to come in and say, Avi, and that someone is going to be me. Avi, yes, I do want to read the second part of 24.
Love it. Now this makes sense. This is great. Love this.
Okay, so after having gone a little bit through this shithole, I don't know if there is anything that you would like to share about this shithole that you are going through, if there are any of the cards that have resonated especially with you and that you feel that that address a part of what you feel is blocking you. It doesn't have to be. We always say that the cards are not perfect. They are just a way to have conversations and to try to unlock stuff either by ourselves or with other people.
I mean, I'll have to spend a little more time thinking about it, but I mean, I'll give a surface reaction. The one that didn't immediately resonate was the support one. And that's on the negative side, right? That's what's sort of holding things back. That one I'm not entirely convinced by, but maybe there's some subconscious thing happening. But the others, the other three, I would say they did make sense, right? It's do not, like starting from the top, don't idealize the achievements of others. Realize that everyone has imperfections, right? And so don't put that weight of that idealized version of someone else's success on yourself. That one makes sense. The hope one, what was the hope one?
The time.
Oh yeah, well, this one certainly, right? It's like you got to make every single grain count because it's not flipping back and coming back, right? Each grain should count. I think that certainly resonates. And then the last one, others validation. This one I'll have to think about a little bit, which is the framing that I need someone to come and tell me that, hey, please do it. I really need you to do it. Or is it that I tell myself, why do I need others' validation, right? I need to free myself from this burden of others' validation and do it for the same reason I did the first book.
Yeah, exactly. And in the end, I think that that there is a lot of pressure, especially I think when people have been able to create the shit that they wanted to create and to be proud of it. Obviously, the sequel or following through with that comes with some additional pressures that maybe one can create more freely when you're just doing it for yourself at the beginning. And I do feel that either by freeing yourself, or there are some creators that, especially when you want to focus on the next thing that you're doing, you want to have that person that is going to tell you, hey, come do this, have these deadlines, focus on this, it's worth doing. No, so in the end here, I think that what it's inviting you to do is to figure out whether you feel that to be able to put this on board to what you wanted to do, you need somebody who's going to be tackling this with you and giving you the incentive to follow through on it, if you feel that you're not just doing it for you anymore, or whether you need to, like, hey, I don't give a shit about anyone else, and I know that I focus that I want to be doing this. No, but that figuring out why you are wanting to do this.
Right.
No.
Yeah,
Oh,
makes sense.
okay. So after this exploration of the shithole, and wishing you that every grain is well spent, and that in the end, I think that the best way one can get themselves out of the shithole is by doing shit with that time. And like we were talking before, that you were saying that you did the first episodes, the first chapters of the book, like really knew where you were going, and suddenly faced like a wall. In the end, when you spend that time, and you, even if it is hitting against that wall and not knowing for sure how to get there, you get there. No.
Right.
So thank you very much for opening yourself up to seeing what the cards wanting to bring up to this conversation. I don't know if there are any questions or doubts that you would like to address or ask before we go to the last card to make it public.
No, I think this is actually, yeah, I like this experience. I'll probably end up watching the recording again just to make sure I capture some of the insights that we've uncovered.
Nice. Well, then just to finish this interview, just to ask you whether there's anything that you would like to make public, either about the shit that you are doing now, where people can find you.
Yeah, so a couple of things. We obviously spent a lot of time, most of the time, talking about the sequel to 24. But there are a couple of other creative works that are in the pipeline. One which is further away is a idea for a play that I've a Bitcoin play. Again, I'm a Bitcoiner, so I go back to it's a single act, 2-person play, and the name of the play is Waiting for Satoshi. It's like Waiting for Godot, but it's Waiting for Satoshi, and there's a twist at the end. It's so I in my mind, Waiting for Godot is a somewhat nihilistic. I know that the interpretations are varied on it, but for me, it was a nihilistic sort of play. And of course, as a Bitcoiner, I'm the opposite of nihilistic, especially after discovering Bitcoin. So it'll have a hopeful ending. That's something I'm hoping, again, by sometime in the summer, it'll be out. The other one that's coming very soon, in a month or so, is I've always, again, just going back to creating something, right? I've I have a Bitcoin podcast, or Bitcoin Noster podcast, and it's audio only. And I was looking at the landscape of other Bitcoin podcasts, and a lot of them are. I mean, this one is unique because we take this sort of card reading and approach, but a vast majority of Bitcoin podcasts, while they can be very educational, are just two Bitcoiners talking to each other about Bitcoin, right? About how fiat is evil, or number go up, or something like that, right? It's in sort of a video setting, and I do want to shake up that format. And the idea I had, I mean, this was an idea I had over a year and a half ago, was to take those conversations and move them over food, right? Because I love food, I love wine, I love the good things in life. So, and make it a travel show, kind of like Anthony Bourdain, right? Traveling to different places, meeting with Bitcoiners, and then having podcast-like conversations, but over food, talking about the food and so on. So, understanding the culture of that place and do it artistically, right? Think of it not as a podcast episode or a travel show. I mean, there are some Bitcoin travel shows already, right? Like handheld iPhone camera type footage, but think of it as a work of art, right? There's this multi-dimensional canvas. There's food. There's you can play with light. You can play with music, sound, and then of course the content, the conversation itself. So I filmed the pilot episode in New York City about a month ago. It's in post-production now. It's probably going to take a few more weeks. The reason it took so long to even from idea to filming is I couldn't find the right filmmaker who'd be able to take, I talked to folks who said, oh, $20,000 per episode, $100,000 per episode. I said, look, guys, can we do a proof of concept first and then see if we can raise some funds? So finally found someone who's willing to take a risk on me, fantastic Bitcoin director. And we filmed, and now we're in post-production. The show is going to be called Finding Home. The idea is these are immigrant stories. Talking to immigrants, exploring their cuisine, and then talking about Bitcoin. But the metaphor I'm trying to draw here is, Bitcoiners in some sense are immigrants from the old fiat matrix, and we're trying to find home in this new world, right? So I wanted to mirror that with a literal immigrant story of trying to find home or finding home. So that's the idea,
Nice.
sort of metaphorical idea behind the show, and that should be out either around Christmas time or early in January.
Nice.
Very nice. And I always say that I always like to tackle the creative processes that I do by thinking as well, like the adventures that I want to live. So it feels like a great way to just have awesome food and meet great people and have deep conversations about a topic that a lot of people hold very close to their heart, and that can be a very opening conversation as well for people who don't know the Bitcoiner world.
Right.
Very nice. Well, Avi, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing little parts of your creative process with us and this shithole that we've gone through together. And we really hope that you can get out of it and that you can start getting into that zone sooner than you think.
Well, I would tell you what, this episode has inspired me. So at least, if nothing else, I'll start doing shit.
Oh,
nice.
thank you.
That's what it's all about. Doing shit about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Avi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marta. Thank you, Mar.